everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Branching Factor podcast. This is episode 24, I believe, and I'm your host, Tommy Thompson. Welcome. And today we've got something a little special. We've got something a little different. We've been doing great, actually. I'm really pleased with the range of interviews we've had coming onto the show throughout this year. And this one actually is really fun. I'm really looking forward to sharing this with you. So this week we're here to talk all about Little Learning Machines. This is a video game that was released out of early access and into full release earlier this year by a studio based in Canada called Transitional Forms. And it's all about the idea of, it's a puzzle game essentially. And what we're trying to do is train non-player characters using AI techniques to learn how to solve puzzles. Now, one of the things that's really exciting about this is it's actually utilizing a lot of contemporary reinforcement learning. And it's not just about using those tools and that technology in order to learn or to train these characters in order to solve a particular problem. The game itself also kind of goes out of its way to try and teach the player more about the fundamentals of how reinforcement learning works, such that you can get better at solving a lot of the puzzles along the way. And so I've had the pleasure of meeting several of the development team over the past year or so. And in fact, as we'll get into in the episode, I first stumbled across this game when I met the lead programmer, Dante Camarena, at the AI and Games Summer School in Cambridge in 2023, in the summer of 2023. And Dante showed me this game. And I thought, this is weird and bonkers, and nobody's doing stuff like this right now. This is really exciting. And subsequently, they've had a bit of a boom year. Of course, the game went into early access, and then they fully launched it. They've also received and won numerous awards as well for the game. I think the Canada Screen Award, it was also Best of Play at GDC this year. And they also actually gave a talk at the AI Summit this year talking about the underlying AI technology. So for this issue, what we're doing is I've sat down with three members of the development team. So Dante Camarena returns once again to have a chat with me, but also Nick Counter, who's the lead designer and also the art lead on the project, as well as Fiona Firby, who's the community manager at Transitional Forms. And we're just going to get into it and discuss like the year that they've had. We talk a little bit more about the game, and then critically that there's actually a huge update, and we've tied this episode of the podcast right in when they're pushing a huge free content update to the game that launches on September 5th with new islands, new quests, new cosmetics and more. And yeah, I'll give you a little bit more detail on that at the end of the episode, but for now, let's jump into the interview and hear from the rest of the gang. Okay, we're here. We've got the gang from Transitional Forms with us for Little Learning Machines. So to work my way around the screen, we got Nick Counter, the lead artist on Little Learning Machines. Say hello to the internet, sir.
Hello, I'm Nick.
There we go. Don't forget, this is an audio medium, so waving's great, but also we need to use the microphone. Also, we got Dante Camarena, who is the technical lead.
Hi, how's it going?
There you go. You made it. And last but not least, the community manager at Transitional Forms, Fiona Firby.
Hello, hello.
Fantastic. So, of course, if you're listening to this, hopefully you already are familiar with the recent episode over on AI and Games, all about Little Learning Machines, a game that teaches AI, which is also about teaching AI how to solve problems. I'm not going to get into the specifics or too deep into it, but essentially it's a puzzle game in which you're trying to train little characters in order to solve a myriad puzzles across all these lovely little idyllic environments. But in the process, it also actually teaches you a little bit about the AI technology that it's utilizing. So we've done a full episode over on AI and Games in which I've also interviewed all of these lovely people. And also we had Pietro as well, one of the co-founders from Transitional Forms, in on the call with us. Go check out the video. Plus, we also have a full write-up over on the AI and Games newsletter over on aiandgames.com. So for this episode of Branching Factor, what I wanted to do is just get everyone onto a call and just have a bit of a chat, a little bit more, because also it's been nice to chat with everybody about this game for the interview for the video we did, but also some of the team I'd never actually met until we did that interview. So Fiona, for example, and Pietro, we never met properly until we'd done the interview. But Dante and Nick, we've bumped into each other a couple of times. Dante actually is instrumental, I think, in getting this game in front of my face, and we're going to get into that story in a little bit. But yeah, it's how we doing, everyone? It seems like you've had a bit of a crazy year. You've came from early access into full launch, a GDC talk as well, and now we've just done this thing on AI in games. How's it been?
It was a roller coaster. It's the whole process of little learning machines has took quite a long time, and because of that, the state of AI also changed so drastically during that time. I think we must have started at least conceptualizing little learning machines nearly 4 years ago, but at least 3 years ago. But 4 years ago, we were making diagrams and coming up with the ideas, and so back then, machine learning wasn't even in the common lexicon. It was kind of like people knew that Google used AI to update your searches, and it was just starting to be something that you could use it to recognize your own face in your Google images or something like that. But other than that, there wasn't really much kind of common understanding of it. So developing little learning machines, especially into this year when the big AI boom kind of happened, was quite a ride, because so much was happening all around us, and we're is this still relevant? Is it more relevant than ever? I don't know, especially because of the AI that we use, the reinforcement learning specifically in game. We're this could either be behind the times or ahead of the times, or just luckily for us, I think it kind of just works in parallel to kind of everything that's happening. It's not using large language models. It's using reinforcement learning in a very specific way to train a very specific small little character or series of characters. And I think that kind of worked in tandem with everyone starting to learn more about AI in general. But because of that, it made the kind of the year kind of crazy, because we need to get this out now. The AI buzz is happening. Let's just finish this. And but as of now, I feel very relaxed now that it's released.
Speaking of, I guess, so I know you guys had a booth at GDC. You've been naturally touring the game around. Also, I imagine, Fiona, you probably also take the bulk of this, because as community manager, you're also doing a lot of streaming and kind of talking about the game in a public setting as well. How have you found that interfacing with people about the language of it, that when you're explaining, we're using machine learning to train the animals in the game, is that something that people are largely following along with? Are you finding different levels of base knowledge already, and some people just going, I don't have a clue, don't know what you're talking about?
Yeah. I'm going to take a second to think. When it comes to talking to people about little learning machines, you kind of have two first reactions you're going to get if you're face to face with someone. It's either, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like if I ran into someone like you, for example, Tommy, they would know, and they'd be like, what? This is so cool. How did you get this in this tiny little packaged format? And it's cute and it's a game, and what? Or you have the other half of people that are what do you mean it's AI? And kind of hesitant sometimes on exposing themselves to more AI. We've launched... It's a
loaded term in 2024, I think, for sure. I have this conversation all the time, particularly around the games industry. It's you do AI, what type of AI? It's okay, right, God, need 10 minutes. Yeah, it's a thing.
No, you're so right. Launching at a time where there is this fear mongering to do with AI on one hand of things, and then this excitement and this future, and learning and understanding it, which is really where I hope people are starting to make their way into, is understanding and learning about it, and not being scared of it, not fearing change, because change is coming. It's here. AI has changed everything in the past year and a half, especially since ChatGPT launched. Obviously, I'm talking more as a non-AI person in this light, you know what I mean? So yeah, when approaching people, you either have everyone super excited about it, or you have people that are really hesitant because they have minimal knowledge of what AI is happening, and they also just don't get that we are using this game to teach you, to further your understanding and show you this. I'm like, this isn't gonna take over your computer. You're gonna teach it how to chop down a tree. So I mean, it's been an interesting time for sure, and it's been really cool to see the people that do get excited about it, because not only do you have the people that get excited about it because of the tech, but you also have people that get excited about it because they're enjoying the game. They take pride in their animo. They love sharing what they've been able to teach them to do. And that's been so cool and rewarding, I think, for us as a team to see when people share their experiences, like in our Discord. Or we had some people stream the game as well, and like having the chance to get on those and see how people are interacting about it and see how they get excited, just like we did when we thought of this idea way back when. So that's been super rewarding.
Like, I will say, it's funny. I remember when we were doing the interview, and I think talking about the empathy that you would develop for the Animos, which I think when I started playing it, I wasn't too fussed. I'm just like, do the thing, collect the crystals, do the thing, well done, give it a pat, go and pet the dog, go pet the dog. Actually, I realized the first time I started to develop any sort of emotional attachment to it was when I went to solve another puzzle on another island, and I had to reset the brain of an Animo that I had, and I'm like, like, can I not just cache this and store it away somewhere? No, I need to throw all this out because I need to like reset this character's brain. And then it made me think, I think it was yourself, Fiona, I was talking about it, like building empathy towards the Animos. I was like, yeah, man, you guys got me. Like, and it is, I think one of the interesting things about it is it is a unique game. I say unique, we say it in the video as well. I'm going to bring it up here. This isn't a new concept, you know, but also critically, it's not a common concept you see now in 2024. Like, you know, people of a certain age will go, oh yeah, creatures in black and white. And it's like, yeah, that's because I'm 40. That's why I remember those two games, because I was in high school and college when those games came out. Whereas we've not really had anything else like of that ilk. And so I feel like that also helps with the enthusiasm for it, because it is a relatively unique concept still at this point.
So while there haven't been many games, there's actually like a niche community that follows reinforcement learning, like from like a casual perspective on like YouTube. There's like a lot of sludge content, which it's not sludge content. It's more like content that you watch that is like visually engaging. That's just like, we trained an AI to do this thing, to play this game, or we trained an AI to walk, or after 1,000 evolutions, this creature learned how to do this thing. And we were hoping to kind of hit that. Maybe to make it fast, we had to make a more discrete simulation. But like the kind of that content does have its kind of following, like its reinforcement learning following, which we think is kind of cool. So maybe that's like a subculture that's waiting for its own kind of like pivotal game to hit.
Speaking of said pivotal game, I think I definitely want to wind the clock back, because the first time I saw Little Learning Machines was last year. Dante, you were a student at the AI and Games Summer School in Cambridge in the UK. Of course, if you're watching this on AI and Games Plus, I did an entire vlog about being there as I was a panel moderator and a professional nuisance at that one. They didn't invite me to speak that year, but this year they did. I don't know why. I don't know who thinks this is a good idea. But anyway, so I was there, and I distinctly remember it was the end of the summer school. We'd been there the whole week, and I think it was the closing reception, or like the drinks reception or whatever in the evening. We're all having a drink and a snack and whatever else. And I distinctly remember I think I was getting ready to leave, actually. I think I was leaving like 10 minutes later, and Dante's like, I got to show you this thing. Tommy, I need you to come over and show me this thing. Like, what was the state of the game at that point versus what we see now? Because I remember you showing me it, but I'm actually struggling to remember the particulars of what the demo looked like at that point.
So at that point, we didn't have any quest islands. Like, we had just kind of come up with the idea of like, oh, we're going to make all this content for it. But like, we had just nailed the updated training. I was very happy about it, but it was also kind of buggy. So I do remember having to be like, I shouldn't do that. Let me just restart it.
I'd forgotten that. It was I only remember the good things. Critically, I only remember the good things.
But I think what was interesting to me, first of all, I just want to point out that like the summer and the summer school on AI and games is like one of the most amazing kind of like conferences I've been to in like my life. Like, I've been to like like academic conferences, and I've been to like industry conferences. This was like a perfect like middle ground. It was full of so many like awesome people. Like John Schaefer was there, Oscar Stolberg was there. Like it was like, and then like on the other side you had like academics as well, like Dr. Tegelius and Yananakis. But at the same time, it was just want to say that that's if anyone ever listens to this podcast and gets a chance to go, it's like 100% like a great experience. But what I found interesting at that place was that I kept saying like, hey, I have this reinforcement learning game. Do you want to check it out? And people are like, oh, reinforcement learning. Because like at that point, I think there was like this tiredness in like academia of reinforcement learning, which is fair. Because like at the time, it had been like a couple of years of like it had been like 4 years since like OpenAI's like AlphaGo. I think it's been like 5 years since AlphaGo kind of first hit, and you had AlphaGo Zero, and then you had Alpha Star, all of which were like kind of put people into the mindset of reinforcement learning as the future. And then you got a bunch of like papers that came out like every year that's like, oh, we did this reinforcement learning technique. Oh, we did this reinforcement learning technique. And here I was just trying to be like, okay, well, this is the most basic of that. We're going back to PPO, which is like kind of one of the original like papers. I think it was also published by OpenAI on like self-play and like how to model behavior. And I was like, oh, we just took this existing implementation and made it like user-friendly. So when I showed it to people there, academics specifically, a lot of them were like, okay, so what? I was like, but players can play it. Like they don't have to install anything, and it's like really fast, and you can just use it. And it was always a struggle to try to convince people that the user experience was kind of where it was at. And that's actually where I learned about another project called ArtBot, which incidentally uses Q learning underneath. It doesn't use neural networks, but it's also I don't know if it was by Dr. Yananakis' lab, and they did a thing where they wanted to educate people on 3 different kinds of like machine learning. So they have like an image classifier, a bit of an RL agent, and it looked very similar to Anima or to little learning machines, and that like it was also block based and stuff. So just getting to go to that conference and sharing it with all those people kind of put me in a mindset of like, oh wow, like first of all, yeah, this is kind of like novel, but it's also very well grounded in a lot of like a similar work. And then on the other hand, it's like, okay, well, I guess we gotta do more to really drive it home. So I don't know if that's kind of the story you were looking for, but
no, I was interested to hear it, particularly from your perspective, because you know, as we talk about in the vlog as well, when I did the summer school that year. Also, at this point, I believe the vlog for this year's summer school will also be live now on AI Games Plus, so go check that out. But for me, because for me, it's always interesting because I come from that space. I know that space really well, and sometimes some of the most interesting things is slightly trying to reinvent the wheel again in a more interesting or appealing way that addresses some sort of critical issue, problem, niche, whatever. And so I remember when you were like, oh, we've got this reinforcement learning in a game, and I'm like, you put reinforcement learning in a game? Like, that caught my interest, because one of the things I think that's really funny about the summer school is that it is, here's all this really cool AI tech that we're exploring on a research level, and then 90% of it we still don't ship in a game because it's not quite there yet for one reason or another. And then, so we put RL in a game. I'm like, you're crazy, let's go check this out.
So one of the most like awesome moments in to speak to that was when I showed it to Oscar. Again, Oscar Stolberg, big fan. Like, if you haven't played Townskeeper, it's a beautiful little toy, and Bat North is also delightful.
Made an entire video about it. I interviewed him. Go and check it out on AI Games.
But
shameless plugs all round. Let's do it.
But I showed him the because I was also like, do you want to check this out? Because like, you're cool, and I'd love it if he'd see our work. And like, and then he's like, I don't know if well, anyway, I'll just say it's like, out of all of the things I've seen at this conference, this is the one thing that kind of speaks out to me as like useful in a game. Like, this is actually cool. Keep going, keep working on it. Still needs a lot of UX improvements, because like I remember he was like, this doesn't feel good. Clicking, why can't I drag? So some of those are still missing from the game. But like, I remember when he said that, he's like, this is actually used in the game, and that was a cool moment. So I mean, kudos to Oscar if he's listening. But that was I think that speaks to the scenario of like, a lot of the people who went there were, you know what, there was like game developers, there was also like architects. I remember like going to the pub and having a drink with somebody who was like, oh yeah, we designed like a living space in like Germany, and then we just wanted to find a way to better like procedurally generate apartment buildings, and we figure that some of the techniques here would be useful. So like you never know who's going to apply this stuff, so it's a great place to kind of like combine like a kind of theory with application. Sorry to interrupt you, Tommy.
No, I think like particularly also then this kind of speaks to the rest of the year, because as you said, like you only had the couple of training scenarios that I remember you showed me, but subsequently the game is now out, and that's been barely a year. So none of the islands were built. So who picked up that workload in between? Nick, judging by your face, I feel like you had something to do with this.
I think we all kind of shared the experience of trying to pump out those islands, and it really, we had the trainer working, like Dante said, we got the trainer 10 times speed, but the biggest struggle during the entire development of the game was how smart could they be, how fast do they train, and how does that work into gameplay. So specifically when it comes to making the quests, we're like, if we can't over design these quests, if the Animo can't do it themselves, and we can't make multi Animo quests if they can't work together to kind of like do these sort of things. So the entire time, once we finally got the trainer ready and we're finally like, okay, we can train these behaviors in this amount of time. Now let's like just pump out all these final quests. And so that was a lot of that final bit of work was polish and QAing, and QAing is a whole other story with a game using reinforcement learning. It's kind of QAing itself, but also not.
Because you could see the immediate path to solving the problem. It's you need to get past all the cacti and pet the dog, that's pretty much from one of the islands. I think it's the first island in the game. But then I need to build a bot that can figure that out, and then given all the tools that are available to it, it's like, I just want you to pet the dog. If I remember right, when I did it the first time, I did it kind of by accident. It was sort of, it's the 1,000 monkeys on typewriters thing. I was like, well, if I just leave him going at it for long enough, and the dog will kind of maybe come over, and then it just kind of like, just mash the dog at the right moment. I was like, oh, thank God. But I did eventually learn how to make that more efficient, and that it actually could do the thing it was supposed to do. And I think, certainly we talk about this in the episode as well, like sort of the balancing act of the tech back end, and then also on the design side, like, here's a cool puzzle, could we even get it to do it?
Yeah, and there's like, so we'll talk more about kind of like an update that we're bringing on, but in that we've even added more quests to some extent, and even making some new quests. I kind of like, even though I've trained so many Animo, I started realizing like just small little things about how to train them, being like, oh, I can just go from training an Animo on more of a static character. So like, I'm going to hit this static character into the water with a bat or whatever. And then I can just naturally use like a curriculum to like be like, okay, like let's hit a moving character into the water. But then I kind of reverse engineered it, so I trained it to hit the moving character in first, and I was like, oh, no matter what, it's going to be able to hit those static characters into the water so easily. But since it's turn based, the Animo hits the block in front of the NPC it's trying to, because it's anticipating its movement. So it would walk over to a static thing and stand next to it and just like be hoping it would be walking into the bat, and it never would. And I was like, oh, I never even thought about that. So it's just like all these bizarro behaviors that make complete sense once you understand like what they're doing and how they're trying to solve this problem, but are not even like it's not intuitive to me. And I've tried so many sometimes, like the behaviors continue to
I had the same thing where just there's certain moments where I'm like, all right, yeah, okay, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to put the thing there and I'll put that over there, and then we'll randomize the position of these objects, and I'm just going to run a bunch of training. We'll set the rewards. No, that's not what I want you to do. What about? And then it wasn't until it starts enumerating and it runs a couple of 1,000 iterations that my brain goes, Oh yeah, yeah. There was you missed this. I need to go pause the thing, go back in, try and edit it all. And I realized when I was editing the video as well. Like originally, I'm like, do I have like pristine footage of me? Like, here's me creating the perfect training environment. It's like, no, I'm happily just going to have in the background while you guys are talking. We've got the talking heads in the episode. Me just like, no, don't do that. I need to fix this and put that there. We need more trees because clearly they're not paying attention to the trees. So we need more trees in there. And at first I was really kind of worried about the quality of the gameplay footage I was going to put in the episode. And I thought, well, no, this is very much part of the process as a player learning the things that you haven't thought about during. I was suddenly just having flashbacks to grad school days, if I'm honest, in both positive and negative ways. I got to ask though for Fiona, because so you're streaming this and showcasing this. How much practice have you had to then go out and go, right, well, I need to be able to show this one thing where we can get it to pet the dog. And then you're like, oh God, min-maxing it.
Pretty much. It's been a while since I did that exact order of events. But when it comes to like showing people like live, specifically like in a live setting, like in a stream, or like we were at GameCon Canada last year and I remember like demoing stuff live for them there. I'd pick what I know the best, and it would probably be something like petting the dog or kicking the ball or collecting a crystal. But it took me, because when you play the game, you're training them and you're teaching them things. But if you are a noob like me, like a newbie at the game and at reinforcement learning and at AI, you have to teach yourself too, right? Like, and you really are learning how to effectively reinforcement train these little beings. So it was definitely a little bit of a curve when it came to like finding what I thought would not only be like good to train for people, but also like something tangible that you can understand my process of it, but also you can see a successful like thing happening. You understand the process of it and you can see where you would go with that. I always defaulted to petting the dog. That was my favorite one. I mean, the reason I liked showcasing that one so much was because I feel like when people with no experience approach training their first little machine for the first time, they think they can just put in the 2 rewards and boom, it's going to work. They don't think about the environment. They don't think about how long it takes. They don't think about the placement of the machines. And so making sure that people are aware of their animal getting traumatized or stuck and memorizing what's going on was a very important thing to me. Stressing the environment to anyone when I was teaching someone or like showcasing it for the first time, I was like, you got to think about all these things. It's like, we've talked about it internally sometimes and we say like, it's like you're a parent and you need to give your child not only the directions of what to do, but the environment of what to do and everything else that comes in parenting. You can tell them what you want them to do, but that 3-year-old isn't going to go clean up their mess on their own. You know what I mean? So framing it that way to people, I thought was really more successful in understanding how to approach it, because with no experience and being totally fresh eyes on this concept, you just don't think about all the other things that contribute to how you grow up, how you exist, how you learn things. And that's what's so important, not only in the broader context of life, but in training your machines to do what you want them to do.
Because I think critically, like you say, like you're taking it to events and then when you've got someone at your booth, you've got like a very limited window. I mean, I can speak of this from great experience. You get very limited window to get someone on board with your game and for them to get it. And I think like when you play Little Learning Machines, it's a little different because you've got the big crystal dude who, I forget the character's name, but just kind of chats along all the way through it and kind of gives you a lot of hints and a lot of guidance as you're going through, which I think kind of nicely tutorializes an awful lot of it when you're like, hey, train an animal to go and collect crystals. But you're like, I've got about 2 minutes to sell this on to this person. That sounds like, you're like, right, I have very specific scenarios that I'm just going to run because I know I can set it up roughly like this, and I'm going to get like a trained policy out of it in like 30 seconds or whatever.
Exactly.
But to that point, like actually, like kind of that experience that Fiona was talking about, and actually making the kind of whole game is somewhat of a tutorial of teaching reinforcement learning. But the main tutorialization, there's like a little section at the very beginning where you're just collecting crystals. And I brought up QA before, so that was like the kind of the tutorial was the hardest thing because as much as like we were so like collecting a crystal is easy. You're like, it's assigning a single reward and you're placing down crystals and you're waiting for it. But every single thing around that, like, I guess is like anytime we would get, players to like just random people who've never seen it before, they wouldn't even get to they're like, what do I click on? And I'm like, oh no, they can't even get to the training. they've even gotten to the training and it's hard for them. And I was like, you just click on that one thing. But like even the most subtle things when in game design that you take for granted can be so unclear. And if even like the most subtle things that aren't to do with reinforcement learning are troubling some players, you're like, oh, we're in for like a long, hard run.
I'll tell you one. I'll tell you one we had years ago when we shipped our platforming game Sure Footing, which we had platforms, and a lot of the platforms, some of the platforms had a spring at the end of it. And the idea is you jump on or you just run into the spring and it will launch you. And so sometimes you could see there was one platform and another platform and there's no way you could jump from those two, but there's a spring on the end of the current platform you're on. And the amount of effort we had to go into to get people to recognize that it's a spring and that the spring will do the thing. People would jump over it and go, I couldn't jump. I couldn't make the jump. Like, yeah, there was a spring. Oh, I didn't know what that was. Like, why didn't you just try it and find, like, no, I wasn't sure. We even at one point, because it was procedurally generated and we generate the levels and we had like the springs were kind of templated parts of the level. We actually experimented at one point with having billboards that would float up and down in the sky that had an animated graphic on it that was like, run onto the spring and the spring will launch you into the air, and people would never notice it. And we would only generate it the first couple of times until you successfully hit a spring. And then like just sometimes people would never see it. And eventually we threw it out because we're like, nobody's looking at the damn thing. Why are we spending this much effort? There was all these engineering challenges of making sure it spawned in the right place in the background so the player could read it successfully. And yeah, just like I think I learned a lot on that game because, you know, platforming, you kind of expect everybody understands how Mario works, right? So you kind of, or even Sonic, right? People understand how platforming games work. And then, no, actually they don't. People don't understand anything coming into it. And that isn't to say that players are stupid, but prior knowledge that you assume is just never there.
So I think this is where I think we, or at least I need to check my design sensibilities, because a lot of the time growing up, I was locked in a room with a couple of very bad games. Not bad games, but like specifically a lot of educational games. And we talked about this, didn't we? Yes. Yeah. It was kind of like these were the games that were allowed in my house, and then you get locked into, and especially back in the cartridge days of video gaming, like you had like I remember on like the N64 I had like Pilot Wings, and like I don't think it was Big Rigs, but it was like a similar kind of like driving game. And let me just tell you, Pilot Wings is impossible to play. And in Mexico you buy the cartridges in like a tarp in the market, and they don't come with a box or a manual or anything, and there was no internet, so it's just like, oh, I guess I gotta figure out how to play Pilot Wings by myself entirely, and it's extremely unintuitive. But that is kind of what I was hoping to hit. And I mean, yeah. I don't think I think that's maybe like a bad take, but I think the most value of little learning machines is when you literally like lock someone in a room with it, and like that's your only source of entertainment, because then which again is a terrible like design goal for a game, but that's kind of how I kind of learned to like play a lot of games and like intuitively, because like Sonic, for example, I actually had a really hard time with the Sonic Springs because of the exact same reason you were saying, because like I couldn't understand how they worked until like maybe you try for like 5-10 minutes and then you're like, oh, and like that process of like trying, failing, accommodating, and getting it develops an intuition, and ultimately that's the most value you're going to get out of this game, out of like little learning machines, is like the ability to develop an intuition. Like I remember talking to a friend of mine, we're working on this game, and it's just like, are people going to get it? And it's like, like, because we were talking about the old Sierra games, like the Impossible Mind of Dr. Brain, or like the old ones. And it's like, those were kind of like figure it out, or especially some of the point and click adventure ones where it's just like try every possible combination until you get it. And it's curious to, maybe that's like a design sensibility that's worth abandoning nowadays. Like maybe that's not worth doing, but it really does feel like if a player ever finds themselves in that position with something like little learning machines, what they'll get out of it is they'll get like the most value, which is like, hey, congratulations, you now have a intuition for something that isn't inherently intuitive. And I think that's maybe the biggest problem with reinforcement learning, is that there's like this gap, because reinforcement learning is like, out of all the machine learning, I mean, classified, like what's called supervised learning is its own monster, but like reinforcement learning has this kind of like intuitiveness. It's like, oh, it's like training a dog. So it has like this like natural intuition of like carrot and stick. But then it's also extremely unintuitive in a lot of ways, which is like, oh, there's an alignment problem. Oh, there are subtle noises in the inputs. Oh, the inputs don't reflect reality. And these are like very like careful, like very specific like intuitive parts that unintuitive parts, that you don't really understand right away. So there's this like first intuition gap. It's like, oh, I just need to tell it what to do and it'll learn eventually. But then there's there's a leap to like, oh, there's all these things that don't work the way you immediately imagine how they do. And crossing that gap requires a lot of trial and error, I guess.
And I think that also speaks to what I found was the most kind of appealing, I think, about little learning machines, is that it feels quite stripped down in a lot of its design sensibilities. We talked about this in the interview. I mentioned it in the video that it's a heavily discretized environment. It looks like half of the things that you would see out of a textbook on, like, here's your first example of like how reinforcement learning works in a kind of grid world style environment in a textbook. And it's like, cool, you've video gamified that. Because I think what you were saying there about design sensibilities, and I think it's really difficult nowadays to assume prior knowledge of the player because games are just so much broader nowadays. And also critically, gamers are spoiled for choice. So like you were saying there about, oh, I got Pilot Wings and then I just sat there and smashed through it until I figured it out. You gave me flashbacks to the very first computer we had in our house was an Amstrad CPC 464, which dates me massively. That was a 1980s computer. The games came on cartridges, like tape, physical tape. You had to run the tape. It took 20 minutes for the game to start, and it either did or it didn't. I never got past the first level of Aliens, the adaptation of the James Cameron movie, which is just flying you down onto LV-426. I don't know what happened after that. Did they find them? Did they get out? I don't know. Maybe there's a movie I should go and check out. But like nowadays, if you play the first level of a game and it's, this isn't working for you, like, yes, so I did. You remove it. And then what's the other game that you got in the Humble Bundle last month? Or what is the other 10,000 games that are on Game Pass? And so I feel like what you guys did with both making the puzzles accessible enough, the art style appealing enough, and then critically, as we've talked about in length in the video already about the tech back end of it, such that you can train them quickly. It still it caters to players such that they can engage with it better, and also you're probably still going to lose players at some point because they're just like, oh my god, I can't take this thing. But hopefully that's like 8 hours. I had a moment actually recording the footage for the game where I think I was trying to do which one was it? Giving the flower to the animal who's running around, and I couldn't get my policy to do it the way I wanted, and I actually lost my shit, pardon my French, at one point. I'm just done with this, I'm going to another island, or I went off, made a cup of tea or something like that. So yeah, I feel like that's a really interesting like bunch of issues you have to balance across in order to like keep players invested in the game.
I feel like that's like a bigger comment on society's attention span right now, like everything right now. We the short form content in life is just like you need to grab people in seconds and get their attention and bring them in. So when we made that big jump that we talked about in the video, I think we touched on it today, from the training speed, it was like this light shining down. I remember because I'd played it obviously with the slower one, and how it was before, and then when it changed, it was like, oh my goodness, and you have to. It made the player shift from, okay, you can set it and forget it, to, okay, I actually need to supervise. I actually need to watch. I actually need to pay attention. And I think that concept of watching them train, not just setting it and leaving them alone, did help, at least me as a player, stay engaged, keep watching, wanting to pay attention, wanting to check on them, made a really big difference.
Yeah, because otherwise it runs risk of almost being like an idle clicker game that you kind of have on in the background. And so I think that definitely is, so big shout out to Dante and the technical team for figuring that out, because that, I think, is a huge part of it, that being able to see those policies converging so quickly. Like, I actually I know you guys did something about this, maybe worth bringing it up, because in my lapsed academic career, this seems like the sort of thing, if I was teaching reinforcement learning, even to like a bunch of university students at like freshman year, I'm like, right, how do you understand how reinforcement learning works? Poof, I'd open up little learning machines, get it to collect a bunch of crystals in the cloud, and look, I've got a policy that can now solve different problems. Like, you were also doing like educational resources for this as well. Like, we didn't talk about that in the video, I guess. Like, what was that like?
So we did create a learning companion for educators and even parents to use to help their students or kids or whoever navigate like the more educational aspects of the game and help them complete certain objectives to convey the knowledge and kind of just put in their ideas that, yes, this is a game. You can definitely play Little Learning Machines as a game and enjoy it as a game, but you can come at it with this educational perspective of your learning, reinforcement learning, and understanding the concepts and the reasoning behind why you set the rewards the way you do. So we did make a free learning companion for educators to use to help run these types of like classroom activities. And that was pretty cool. Maybe Nick or Dante want to talk about this more, because I think they were more involved in actually creating it.
I think the other thing about the learning companion that is interesting is like it is kind of in context of AI in general. It's using little learning machines to kind of be an introduction to reinforcement learning in particular, but along with it is kind of like how is AI and machine learning being used in everyday life, and why is this different? So I think it's kind of like a more broader kind of, it takes a more broader kind of stance at the beginning, where it can be like taught to, it was aiming for kind of late elementary school into high school. So people who have never even really thought about it on a broader scale of how they interact with AI in general. It starts there, and then it introduces and uses kind of the tutorial elements of the beginning of the game to kind of like just introduce you to that, exactly what you said, that first policy of using a single reward, like positive rewards, negative rewards, and then the combination of the two to get like that first policy. And yeah, like within the context, you're like, this is kind of not all AI is reinforcement learning, but the fundamentals there, like to kind of like first grasp it, are there to some extent. So that's kind of, I think, where we wanted the learning companion to be, not just about the game, but about just an introduction to AI in general in the world.
One of the teachers' notes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go for it. My bad.
Oh, one of the teachers' notes on there is like compare this to the YouTube recommendation algorithm. Before Little Learning Machines, if I wanted to show someone like what reinforcement learning was, the easiest way I had to do it was to start like a fresh Google account and be like, how many like Doctor Doom videos do you have to click before your entire feed is like Marvel, or like or like how many and then you can, as you click on certain videos, you can see this kind of recommendation system, which is reinforcement learning, or at least it was at some point. You can start to see it converge towards like a specific niche of videos, and then you can talk about the concepts of like exploration versus exploitation. In like, oh, look, it puts you in this very specific video bubble niche, but it also kind of has these feelers out here, such that if you go in that direction, it changes where you are. So you can imagine this as you're kind of navigating the space of possible video topics, and slowly you're changing what videos the algorithm serves to you, and comparing that to like something like little learning machines, where it's like, oh, this is its behavior now, but you can like push it in a specific direction. It kind of has like that. Again, it's a flawed analogy. They're very different systems, but there's an underlying kind of like optimization or like mechanism that kind of leads to a space of like a policy space or like a model space that then leads to specific results. So I think, there's some recommendations in the Learning Companion about that, but it's up to, I think, the educators to be able to kind of make those analogies and find the connections, because that process of optimization is something that occurs not just in reinforcement learning, but in a lot of points in our society where we kind of have these like value functions that we kind of optimize for, and seeing that pattern occur and seeing kind of like how it could be misaligned with the things that we actually want can sometimes like be illuminating for not just, again, ML or RL, but just any kind of optimization process in general.
I mean, I wouldn't recommend looking at my YouTube recommendation. My YouTube recommendations make no sense because for a long time I used the AI in Games YouTube account to just not only do my research for my episodes, but also just to watch YouTube. So now it's like, it's all over the place. I said, do you want to watch a talk about the applications of, supervised learning, reinforcement learning through self-play in this particular video game? Or do you want to watch, like the best bits out of Samurai Jack Season 2? So I kind of give up. But I think it is a really good example. For those of you who already have the game, go and have a look at the Steam page. Actually, there's a link to it there, but also we'll put a link to it in the show notes as well for people to go and check it out. Conscious that we don't want to keep you all too long because you got work to do. You got games to play. And I guess so. This is us. We're sort of early access, full launch, GDC. Like, what has been the highlight of the year? I get what the game's out. Also, I think that's kind of a big thing as well. Like, I think it's been kind of crazy for the team as a whole, right?
It's been a crazy year. Like, launching in early access last fall was such a cool experience, and seeing people get their hands on it for the first time, seeing those experiences getting shared. We did a bunch of live streams, like the three of us actually, showcasing different ways you could train and really getting that community feedback. Seeing just the first interpretations were super, super cool. And then, we went into gold launch, and then we not only went to GDC, but we won GDC Best of Play, which was super cool, Best in Play. And that was really exciting. We got nominated for a Canadian Screen Award. And it's been really exciting to see not only the players play the game, but also like people recognize like the work and the effort and the innovation, which is the technology that goes into behind the game. So it's been really cool.
I'm here for the super fans, like the Discord, people who are just like, I did this, and I did that, and I did this, and I did that. I don't want to call them out specifically, but they know who they are. They're on the Discord, and they're consistently like posting like their updates and their progress, and it's been very more like it fills my heart with joy.
Nice.
Yeah, I think the GDC was like definitely a highlight for me, but also like a highlight in that it was as kind of the artist on the team, I felt like a complete fraud. Like we all went to the AI dinner together, and there's like professors, and I was like, I don't belong here at all. But the fact that I was included was really terrifying, but also exciting. But the fact that like I could actually talk to some of these people and not totally fall on my face was fun.
Hey, not many of them have shipped RL in a game, so you get that over them for sure. Like I haven't done it. But I mean, my imposter syndrome has imposter syndrome at this point. I've actually stopped trying to get too upset about people's perceptions of me. I'm like, what am I supposed to be upset about? But yeah, it's been kind of a crazy year for you, and I think it's kind of interesting just to briefly touch on this. We didn't talk about it in the video, but like right now also, like Fiona, you're over doing the robots make TV on Twitch, right? So like everything that Transitional Forms is doing, it's all about kind of playing with AI in really fun and weird ways. Like, so we had Agents, which we talk about in the episode, which was sort of an interactive film that you built using training agents using agents, AGENCE, training agents, AGENTS, using reinforcement learning for the purposes of that interactive film that then led into little learning machines. And then you've got, sorry, Fiona, could you actually just explain it to me? Because I was looking at Robots Make TV and I'm like, what is this? This is absolutely wild. Like, it seems really fun though. I've actually sat and watched a bit of it on Twitch in prep for today.
Yeah, no, for sure. Sorry. Robots Make TV is this crazy, kind of wacky three-way authorship experience with these created AI beings, you, the viewers, and this platform that we're creating. And basically, on Twitch right now, it is this AI-generated reality show where viewers can suggest to create different characters, they can suggest different scenes, and then we basically run them through the gauntlet. And the really cool part about the show is that you, the viewer, so say you're in the chat watching, at any point in time, you can just be like, okay, like, what if we, like, put them in a prison and like see what happens. The three characters that we made today, like let's put them in jail and see what drama they come up with here. Or one of my favorite scenes that we've been doing lately, well, there's two. There is like a cooking show, so we get them to create like the worst dish they've ever had in their entire life and try to like come up with what's like going on with it. But the cool part about this is what I'm trying to say is it is real time and interactive. So you as the viewer come into the chat and you interact directly with the show, whether it be giving ideas for what you want to see created, helping create characters, helping shape where the next kind of iteration of the whatever show is being generated right now goes. And it's really this three-way authorship with you, AI, and I'm butchering this three-way authorship line, so please ignore that. But it's really this really cool collaborative experience with the viewer, AI, and the show that's being going on right now. And yeah, that's kind of a rough overview. It's a wacky, kind of messed up, but super cool show. And if you have a second to check it out, you can have a lot of fun there, and you can suggest some crazy things and see how they react.
So Robots Make TV is like also like we kind of started production on that, or like the first kind of prototypes on that at the same time as Little Learning Machines. So back then we were using GPT-2. So the first iteration, we were in COVID, and the first iteration of it is a AI chat just like this, where we have like 4 different AIs just talking to each other using GPT-2. So there was a lot of just hello kind of conversations, but every once in a while it was really cool. And like kind of like I was talking about at the beginning of this talk with like Little Learning Machines, the large language models have been the true kind of like stars of AI for over the past like year or two. And Little Learning Machines kind of like, snuck around that because it's reinforcement learning. Robots Make TV is really interesting because since it's using large language models, it's actually exploiting all of like the newest technology there. So the kind of like the development from using GPT-2 to kind of when GPT-3 first came out, and like every iteration of predominantly using OpenAI, but we've used lots of different ones. As it developed newer features, and it could start writing all sorts of, it could start writing code, it could start kind of like operating like through JSON, and it could start using a single, like we used to just ask it for, say, like phrases and stuff, but now it can like, it can create entire kind of responses from just the like the phrase to the character's emotions to what they want to do, and have that all interact with the other AI involved, the higher level director AI involved, the director, which is generally Fiona, and the audience all at once, all in real time with basically no latency. And that's just like following just like the onslaught of new features and the speed at which large language models have like drastically changed has been a challenge, but also kind of like it's always driving like the team to kind of come up with new ideas of like, oh my god, I can finally do this, and also with real-time voice. For a while there was like a kind of a there was only a few kind of real-time voice, text to voice AIs, and for a while they're all free, but then all of a sudden they're all paywalled, and then so you're trying to find the new voices, so it's just like this mashup of all the kind of different AIs out there, and it's been quite the experience getting it to where it is. It's pretty wild.
I just noticed as you were talking about, we can get it to do all these things now, and then Dante just like kind of quietly shaking his head there, just like, this is a feature request coming my way. Oh no, it's for me to
we can get this thing.
Yeah, that's the story of AI.
Oh hey, what happened to my Trello board? Why does it have 25 things in it?
Welcome to development. Yeah.
One of the things about Robots Make TV, used to be called Dinner Party back in the day, that I found really compelling at the beginning was that GPT-2 had encoded within it, like the internet, which has its demons for sure. But I feel like I always tell people I grew up on the internet because I've moved around like a ton. And then just being able to like fish certain things out of GPT-2 was in its own way kind of an ordeal. Like you had to be familiar with kind of the source material. It's still the case, by the way. Good prompters, whatever that means, in GPT-4 know how to like prompt in a way that touches to a significant corpus. Like if you're touching like Wikipedia, specifically if you're asking for like software, if you can phrase it in the way that an ICPC, like a competitive programming question appears, then it writes better code because it's trained like on a thousand like competitive programming questions or leak code or whatever. But then back in the day for GPT-2, it was the internet. There was a lot of Reddit. There was a lot of like ancient internet like places. So being able to kind of touch into the specific parts, being able to like pull out specific characters and kind of having to not just tell it what to say, but like give it a little example of the kind of like characters that you're trying to pull out from it was, I think, an experience that is pretty much gone. And I think in some of our early streams, before it was real-time and interactive with the audience, it used to be that we invited guest directors on. Like we had a couple of people on. We had like an ethicist that was working on like AI, and it was that was true. We were she was an ethicist, like an AI ethicist at the Vector Institute, who came up and she's just like, how can I get this to like say like the worst things? And it obviously worked. But there were like and one of the interesting things is that we invited a dungeon master, like one of our good friends who's like a very good dungeon master, and they just ran one of the most compelling shows that we ever had because they were running like basically a D&D session, and the characters were being like completely crazy with it, and then eventually he had to kind of put the reins on that. So kind of having that like, and this is what I think our founder like Pietro like mentioned when he said like three-way authorship, that there's always this kind of like play where you have like the interactivity of like the user, then you have the AI coming in with like whatever it's trained on or whatever it learned in the case of LLM. But then at the top level, you have this kind of like director voice. And in Robots Make TV, it's like a Fiona or a Daniil or like the team who's building the actual like framework to some degree. But it's like this weird like interaction between these three voices, which you get already a lot of that in games. Like players dictate how games are played with their gameplay. But with AI, it's almost like the system itself is, or at least with like these generative models and even with like reinforcement learning models, it's like the systems themselves have kind of a mind of their own, if you will. And whether or not that mind is like helpful, beneficial, adversary or not is kind of up for grabs. But it's really an interesting like phenomenon, an interesting, unique little thing to experience.
Yeah, just one more thing about Robots Make TV that I think is super cool, and that I just thought of while listening to you guys talk about it too. This really cool thing about Robots Make TV is that it gives pretty much anyone the power to control like a generative story. Like you don't have to know how to write a detailed script. You don't have to know how to come up with character arcs. Like it gives you the power to take your ideas that you have and just embellish them and let them flourish and really let them grow. So they do make sense. Like so many people don't feel confident enough in their own creativeness to go forth with writing a story, go forth with making a game even. And I think the thing that I find really cool about Robots Make TV is that it does give you that power to see your ideas out and see how they play out and see how characters interact with each other and see how the stories develop without the huge barrier to entry of, am I good enough for this? Can I really do this? So, yeah.
I think it kind of speaks to a lot of the stuff you guys have done, and that they provide these like useful on-ramps to other facets of skill, right? Like I think Little Learning Machines does the same thing, that good puzzle games scratch your brain in a particular way, and I think Little Learning Machines does that as well, in the sense that it's scratching your brain, but it's also actually teaching you a skill that you typically don't realize you maybe need. And I think critically, for someone like who is a bit more AI fluent or interested in being an AI scholar, I think it is actually a really useful tool in that regard. It actually does strike me as the sort of thing you could put in front of students going forward to help teaching them an awful lot about AI. But I'm conscious of time, because you've got to get back to actually making the games. And so speaking of Little Learning Machines, we've got the big update coming our way on September 5th, which I believe will be right around the time this episode airs. If not, it has just passed. What we got? What's coming in this big update? What have I got to look forward to as someone who's already put a ton of time into the game?
Well, we have, I think what we notice a lot with some player testing is there's certain points in the game where there's a whole bunch of main islands. And if you can't pass those main islands, and if it's too hard, which we found that like sometimes the learning kind of curve was a bit too much, what we want to do is just make sure that there's always more content, so that like you mentioned, you're stuck on this on giving the flower to the autonomo that is and that is one of the weirdest, hardest quests, surprisingly, even though it's earlier in the game, but you have to kind of beat that to move on. So we noticed like some people were getting stuck there, so what we did is like we redesigned the entire world map. The game flow is still the exact same, but what we've done at each main island, there is a string of kind of like extra quest islands, which kind of like use the kind of the similar ideas that you kind of found within that island, and then branches off of that and gets progressively harder. So there's like for the main island, you have since it's kind of crystal based collecting, you have kind of 3 more quest islands that kind of come off of that just are progressively more difficult crystal quests, and then for same with like say the autumn island, which requires you to use the axe in lots of different ways. You start using that in new ways, and then there's also 2 more items that are important in those, which is the bat, which is my favorite. The bat is my favorite item, as well as the shovel. So a combination of all these new items, as well as tons of new cosmetics. There's so many new ways to dress up your Animo. But yeah, the main importance is just giving lots of kind of diversity and more opportunities for you to learn some of the smaller, really like test your knowledge with what you just learned from a main island if you haven't been able to beat it yet, and try it on these little islands as well. So that was the main kind of goal with all of the bonuses we're adding in this update.
Nice. And this is a free update as well. This is just free update on the game. Fantastic. Yeah. If you've got it on Steam, there you go. And also you can just go and get it on Steam as well. We'll put the links to the store, of course.
Not to mention bug fixes too. Lots of
general
bug fixes.
Updates.
Quality updates, quality of life improvements, like across the board.
Across the board.
Dante's face just said a lot
18
there.
new islands, more quests, even more cosmetics. There's more possibilities. One thing we always say about Little Learning Machines is literally the possibilities are endless, not only with how you approach the game, but how you train them. There's just more to do. There's more abilities. And something that the team has always said is we believe that players will figure out how to play this game better than we can. Like they will find the cool, random niche training aspects, because everyone will experience this differently and come up with their own unique approach. So we're really excited to see where people take this expansion and where they go with it.
All right. And I need to, excuse me, I need to finish the game, or at least get a certain part of the way through the game, I think, before this update is out. so that I can get into all this new content, or at least give myself a new challenge. I feel like I need to. Well, I'm going to be playing some more anyway, because at the time we're recording this, I'm still finishing the episode, so I will be playing more of the game to capture more footage anyway. So
you think giving that flower to an autonomo is hard? You're just
I got there in the end. I think let me just stress, I did get there in the end.
It gets hard.
Actually, I didn't record the footage of me doing it, so I need to go back and do it again, just so I've got the footage of it. I need to put it in the video somewhere, just because there was that moment of just yes, I got it.
You did it.
No, went.
Finally.
I could actually spend the next 10 minutes talking about the particular hiccup I experienced and why I experienced it but beyond the scope of the episode, we'll talk about it later. Thank you all.
I guess that means you have to watch the video to figure out what exactly went wrong,
There you go. Shameless plug. Like, you're doing a better job with the segues than I am. With that, Nick, Dante, Fiona, thank you so much for joining us on the Branching Factor podcast. Best of luck once again for all the work you're doing at Transitional Forms. And be sure to check out Little Learning Machines, or also go and watch Robots Make TV on Twitch. All right.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for having us. This is so fun.
So thanks once again to Dante, Nick, and Fiona for jumping on a call with me. It was really great to chat with them some more after, of course, we did a formal interview with them, which you can go and check out on the AI in Games YouTube channel, as well as there's also a written up version of it over on AIingames.com. Of course, on that note, be sure to head over to AIingames.com, because we have kind of an overall celebratory Little Learning Machines issue of the newsletter coming up, which also gives links to all the relevant materials, as well as a little bit more of a deep dive into my impressions and perspectives on the game. But as well, on top of all this, I wanted to just give a shout out to everything that is coming up with regards to Little Learning Machines. So as I said, there's a big content update dropping September 5th, and this is bringing a whole bunch of new features to the game. Notably, there's 18 new islands and quests that they're adding into the game at this point, which each have their own unique themes and challenges and the like, which is great because it had such a fun aesthetic and vibe, I think, when playing the game. So getting to see them taking it into new directions and new visual themes and biomes and stuff, I think is really cool, because also that then brings certain new challenges as well. One of the things that I thought was really interesting, and we kind of talk about it in the episode there, was the new levels that they're introducing are also finding ways to help streamline some of the learning curve when it comes to reinforcement learning, because sometimes some of the puzzles can be quite demanding and it might take a little bit of time scratching your head to figure it out. So I kind of like that they've went away and revisited some of this stuff to kind of streamline that process a little bit. And of course, all these new cosmetics as well. There's 6 new costumes for your Animo that you can dress them up in, which is super awesome. So be sure to check out everything that I've posted over on AIingames.com, but also in the show notes for this episode, a link to everything for you, as well as a link to the game over on Steam, and you can check it out. All right, and with that, time to cue the music. I'm getting out of here, and I'll see y'all soon. Stay safe, take care, and I'll be back. The Branching Factor podcast is hosted and produced by me, Tommy Thompson. Our theme music is provided courtesy of Ben Ridge. The logo and thumbnail art is thanks to Helen Odell. And of course, to all of you out there listening, thanks for joining us for this episode of Branching Factor. Wherever you are in the world, be sure to stay safe, have fun, and we will be back.